Good morning. Rosalie and I are really saddened that we weren't able to join you live in Red Deer this weekend. The weather just didn't cooperate with us. It's truly an honor to stand before you today and speak on a subject that is not only timely, but deeply personal for many of us: bearing witness, truth, responsibility, and unity. Before I go any further, I want to begin with something I personally witnessed. Through my work with the National Citizens Inquiry, which many of you know as the NCI, I had the opportunity and sometimes the burden of sitting and listening to hundreds of Canadians come forward and share their experiences. These were not abstract discussions. These were real people. Doctors, scientists, parents, and injured individuals, professionals who risked their careers. Everyday Canadians who simply refused to remain silent spoke out. And as I sat there day after day, listening to testimony from across this country, one thing became very clear to me. We were documenting something that really mattered, not just for ourselves, but for history. We were capturing voices that might otherwise have been ignored, dismissed, or forgotten. And in doing so, we were bearing witness. But I also saw something else, something more subtle, and something more concerning. Even within a movement grounded in truth, grounded in evidence, grounded in shared concerns, there were moments when division began to surface. Differences in approach, differences in emphasis, and differences in personalities. And I remember thinking at the time, if we're not careful, the very people who are united in truth can still become divided in how they carry that truth. And as I look today at what is happening in other movements, including the growing conversation around sovereignty in Western Canada, I see echoes of the same pattern, which is why this message is not just a reflection. It is in many ways a testimony and a friendly reminder. We are not just living through history. We are watching it unfold right in front of us. And more than that, we are witnesses to it. Bearing witness is not a passive act. It is not simply seeing something happen and moving on. To bear witness is to see clearly, listen carefully, record faithfully, and then, when necessary, speak truthfully. Even when it is uncomfortable, even when it comes at a cost, a true witness does not look away. A true witness does not remain silent. And perhaps most importantly, a true witness does not distort what they have seen. You know, over the past several years, many of us have been part of something extraordinary. Through the work of the National Citizens Inquiry and through the growing efforts of citizens across this country, we have seen something remarkable take place. We have heard testimony from doctors who raised concerns, families who suffered loss, individuals who experienced harm, professionals who were silenced, and Canadians who were punished simply for asking questions. We have not been dealing with rumors or speculations. We have been dealing with evidence. Hundreds of witnesses, thousands of pages of testimony, hours upon hours of recorded accounts. And through that process, something important happened. We preserved a record. We created a body of truth that cannot easily be erased. And in doing so, we fulfilled one of the most important roles in a free society. We bore witness. But bearing witness is not where the responsibility ends. In many ways, it is where responsibility begins. Because once you have seen something, once you know something, you cannot unknow it. And you are now faced with a terrible choice. What will you do with what you have seen? Will you represent it accurately, speak about it responsibly, share it with integrity? Or will you allow it to be shaped by emotion, by frustration, or by personal agenda? Because, here's the truth. A witness who distorts what they have seen is no longer a witness. They become something else. We see that every day on our national media, don't we? And in doing that, They risk undermining the very truth they claim to defend. Now I want to turn to something more difficult, something that I believe we must address honestly and directly. Because bearing witness is not just about what is happening around us, it is also about what is happening within us. When it was announced that I would be speaking here, I was inundated with texts and messages, some of them discouraging, some of them disparaging, not only about this conference, but about specific people who were a part of it. And I will tell you honestly that this was not new to me. Over the past 6 years or so, I have seen this again and again. And it is this pattern, this reflex towards criticism, division, and tearing down that I want to warn you about. Because within the broader movement that has grown out of these past years, we are seeing something concerning. We are seeing division, infighting, personal attacks, competing egos, fragmentation. We are seeing people who agree on the vast majority of issues turning on each other over the minority of differences. And I say this not as an outsider looking in, but as someone who has been deeply involved, who has worked alongside many of you, and who cares deeply about what we are trying to accomplish. You know, there's a powerful lesson found in the early writings of one of the greatest movements in history. This happened almost 2,000 years ago when this organization was struggling to establish itself. One of the leaders of that movement became aware of personal struggles and divisions within one of their communities, and so he wrote a letter to the members. They were dividing themselves. I follow this leader. No, I follow that leader. And the message in that letter was clear. You are missing the point. It was not a lack of truth that threatened them. It was the lack of maturity in how they lived it. You know, we need to ask ourselves a difficult question. Are we doing the same thing again today, 2,000 years later? Do we have people who agree on 90% of the issues, share the same concerns, desire the same outcomes, and yet are dividing over the remaining 10%? If that is the case, we must ask, what are we actually accomplishing? Because if we bear witness to the truth but destroy each other in the process, what exactly are we building? The danger of this kind of division is not theoretical. It has real consequences. It weakens our credibility. It confuses those who are watching. And it discourages those who are just beginning to ask questions. And ultimately strengthens those who would prefer that the truth never come to light. Because a divided voice is an ineffective voice, and a movement that turns inward on itself loses its ability to move forward. Before I move towards closing, I want to just take a moment to speak to you about a current issue that in many ways reflects exactly what I've been talking about today. This is the growing conversation around Western Canadian sovereignty, particularly in Alberta. You know, this is not a trivial issue. It is rooted in real concerns. Economic disparity, federal overreach, resource control, representation in government, and a growing sense among many that their voices are no longer being heard. These are not imaginary grievances. They are being felt deeply by a significant number of Canadians. And as someone who spent considerable time studying this issue, I can tell you, there is both truth in the concerns and danger in how the conversation is unfolding. Because what we are seeing once again is fragmentation. We are seeing multiple groups, multiple strategies, multiple visions of what sovereignty even means. Some are calling for separations, others for autonomy within Confederation, and others for reform. And instead of building a coherent, unified approach, we are seeing division, competition, and at times conflict within the very movement itself. And this is where the lesson becomes clear. Because regardless of where one stands on the issue of sovereignty, whether you support it, oppose it, or are still trying to understand it, the principles remain the same. If a movement cannot find unity around its core purpose, if it cannot conduct its internal disagreements with discipline and respect, then it weakens itself before it ever reaches the broader public. And perhaps, more importantly, it risks losing the very people it is trying to represent. This is not just a political lesson. It is a human one. Because once again, we are reminded truth alone is not enough. How we carry the truth, how we work with one another, how we handle disagreement will determine whether that truth has the power to move forward or whether it fractures and collapses under its own weight. We often speak about the importance of documenting what has happened, and that is critical. But I want you to consider something else. History will not only record what happened to us, it will record how we responded to each other. Did we conduct ourselves with integrity? Did we treat each other with respect? Did we remain focused on truth? Or did we allow ourselves to be pulled into conflict, distraction, and division? Because future generations will not only ask, what did they stand for? They will ask, how did they carry themselves while they stood? So where do we go from here? If we truly bear witness, not just in word but in action, then we must hold ourselves to a higher standard. A true witness must be honest, disciplined, courageous, grounded in truth, and yes, respectful, even in disagreement. This does not mean we abandon conviction. It does not mean we avoid difficult conversations, but it does mean that we conduct these conversations in a way that strengthens rather than weakens what we are trying to build. Let me be clear. Unity does not mean uniformity. We will not all agree on everything, and that is not only acceptable, it is healthy. But we must learn to distinguish between differences that matter and differences that divide unnecessarily. Because we do not need perfect agreement, but what we need is shared purpose. As we reflect on what it means to bear witness, I want to leave you with this thought. Bearing witness is not just about exposing darkness. It is about becoming worthy to carry the light. It is about ensuring that the truth we have seen is reflected not only in our words, but in our actions, in our conduct, in how we treat one another. Because in the end, truth without integrity will falter, but truth carried with responsibility and unity will endure. Once again, Rosalie and I deeply regret that we weren't able to attend in person with you today, but we do send a message of hope and blessings with you, and we look forward to seeing you all soon. Have a great conference.